All right, before anyone gets upset at this score, so today we're putting a driver score to the 981 GT4. This is a car I've always wanted to drive because I've always wondered if the rumors were true, which is that Porsche got it right the first time. The 981 GT4 was only produced in 2016 and it was the first GT variant of the Cayman platform, and now a lot of people love it because of how raw and unfiltered it is compared to newer cars. Now Porsche is not guilty of diluting their lineup with more and more technology to the point where the cars aren't fun to drive, like most brands are. Most OEM manufacturers are now producing cars that are heavier, more numb to drive, and have really just lost the plot when it comes to the driving experience. I want to give a quick shout out to the owner of this 981 who reached out cold and just said, do you want to drive this car? If you live in California, specifically the Bay Area, Northern California, and you have a car that you'd be willing to let us drive for a video, let us know. Right now, I'm very much interested in some specific cars like the Aston Martin Vantage, the 4.3, 4.7. Obviously, a manual transmission is a positive, but any gear, any transmission. E90 M3, Mark V Supra, Honda Civic Type R, Integra Type S, and especially a Lotus Emira. These are just cars that I'm really interested in driving right now, or I feel like would fit into the spectrum of scoring that we do to really kick off this channel strong. So if you have one of those, but if you have any car, let us know. I think it's really important to mention that this video is for a specific type of person. If you're a car nerd, specifically really into driving, we make these videos for you. Our other videos are focused on detailing and our products, while these videos are specifically focused on presenting the most important information when it comes to driving a specific car, so that if someone is looking to figure out what kind of weekend car they want to buy, or if you've always wondered what it's like to drive a specific car, like what it feels like, this is something that I'm very passionate about. What this also means is that if you're trying to figure out if the car is right for you to buy as a daily driver, or if you're really concerned with the technology or the comfort or the practicality of the vehicle, that's not what this channel is for. So don't be upset if the score does not reflect what you think the value of the car is, if you're not looking at it purely just from a driving perspective. Like, I just did my Giulia video and a lot of people were upset that I didn't score it super high, but I actually did for a sedan. We just don't have a lot of scores to show you the spectrum of different vehicles and how this would actually fit in. And also keep in mind that the scoring rubric is really specific. We have a specific set of criteria and categories. It's linked down below and also written down below so that you can see some of that. And we talk about it as we go through it and we analyze. But we have to consider that a 1 for a total score is probably a semi-truck, and a 10 might be, you know, a multi-million-dollar car like a Gordon Murray Automotive or something. We have to have room for all of this. So if the car you love is not, you know, high on this scale, it's because it's being compared to everything. And what this allows us to do is break down categories later. So what is the best sedan based off of our scoring rubric and what we've scored? What is the best car under $100,000 or under $150,000 or in a certain back bracket, rather than just comparing it all to one. So once we get more cars in, all this will be able to be accessible through the scoring sheet. You'll be able to use it yourself. We'll have a compendium of all of the cars and what they're like to drive. And a lot of this comes from me as a driving enthusiast, as a car enthusiast. I love paint, I love detailing, but more so I like driving on back roads and racetracks. And I'm really interested in driving dynamics when it comes to steering feedback, suspension, and I love power, but it's really limited in what it actually does for the experience of the car. You have to keep adding more in order for that to be the only feature that you care about. And for some people that's great, but I want to consider all of these things and how they play into the fun of the car. And speaking of that, let's jump into the driver's cam with the 981 and check it out next to its siblings.
All right guys, what better way to kick off the 981 GT4 score than to put it next to its older brothers and rate its style. So first category is style. First subcategory is design. So I rated this at an 8.5 and I believe I rated this at a 9. This is one of those rare cases where I'll be juxtaposing the two because 1, it holds me accountable. 2, it's super relevant. These cars are very, very, very closely related. It does look more like squanchy, shorter and taller and not as raked, smaller wing. So like I would rate this at an 8, but there's certain things that I actually like more about this. Like for instance, the center exhaust and the kind of more classic little ducktail and overall design of this car because of, you know, the era of Porsche where I think, you know, they really did it best. These have a more futuristic look, which is awesome. But, you know, that's personal preference and why we don't rate style so highly. But that's part of the design. Then we have stance. So I rated this at a 9. Stance is about fitment and overall kind of curb presence. These are things that can be changed by taking a car that even if it's ugly, you can lower it, make it a little bit wider, put different wheels on it and improve that stance. So that's why it's its own separate design element and subcategory. This car started those wheels. So those wheels were originally designed for this car. They have basically the same wheel. This owner put TE37s on it, which actually look really awesome, especially with the ground effects. So that's kind of a neutral. Since it's subjective, I think it's a positive. Some people might not. So it's kind of neutral. You can imagine those on this though. And overall, the car, you know, has a great stance to it. The reason why it's probably not as high of a rating, I think I did this one's like a 9.5 or something, is because this actually has a lower, wider butt, and it just looks better. It's way more aggressive stance than this one. So that's pretty straightforward. And then the last category, or last subcategory, is edge. And what we mean is kind of the aggression, the edginess, style factor, the aggressiveness of the design. Clearly, we can use this as an example of what aggressive aero does to a car. It's this wow factor. This car turns heads because of how crazy it looks. And we'll get to that score on another video. And this one has a really awesome higher, bigger wing and a nice rake to it. It does look really aggressive. And this one's just a little cuter, I guess. So I rated Edge at 8 for this car. Overall, fantastic score. I don't know what that totals up to yet. We'll get to that. First, we got to drive this car. It's also pretty dirty. So after the drive, we're gonna have to give this a detail. Let's hop in, start it up, and you know, I'll cut to the fun driving part, I guess. Sound category. Okay, so I gave tone, which is the first subcategory of sound, and by the way, sound is 25% of the total score. I gave tone an 8. This car is actually one of the better sounding, it's probably the best sounding Cayman that's not the RS. The 3.8 in this just has this really nice resonance to it that's really tight, grumbly. You can hear it in the downshifts. And just sounds awesome. It sings really nicely. Remember, so tone is about the exhaust note and how it sings. And this just sounds amazing. It just doesn't have the top end scream that you would want out of it. So that's why it doesn't score higher than an 8, but I think it still beat the 718 because I do think this 3.8 sounds better than the 4. Then for character, so this is overall the sound characteristics of the engine, the valve train, and what you're hearing in the cabin. This actually rated really high. I gave this a 9 because overall it gives you exactly what you want. It's a perfect symphony of all of the natural mechanical sounds of an engine, a drivetrain, exhaust, and everything sounds really tight and put together, and it's not too noisy in the cabin. It is noisy, but not too noisy. The 718 is too noisy. It doesn't sound as put together. There's a lot more things going on, ironically, and this doesn't score above a 9 because, well, it's actually pretty much as high as you can get without something really unique or special about it, like with a Lexus LFA or a GT4 RS that has a special note to it. So a 9 is perfect. Okay, then for volume, I believe I gave this an 8.5. Yes, because that is kind of, it's a perfect amount of volume, cabin noise, exhaust volume, but it doesn't give you that extra loudness in the top end, that scream that you want. And maybe you could adjust this with some add-ons, an exhaust, but I've heard that gives this car a lot of drone, and I don't know. I don't really know how much better you can get it to be. So I think that's a fair score. Now on to the performance. So, well, So performance power, I gave this a 7. It's got 385 horsepower, and you're not really wondering or you're not really thinking this car's boring to drive because of that, but you are missing power at the top end, especially compared to the 718, and you do notice it. So it's not as cool of a fun factor for this car, but you're never lacking enough, and I wouldn't give it lower than a 7 because I think that's reserved for cars within the 285, 300 horsepower range. Now, next category would be handling. This car handles amazing. Obviously, it's got that mid-engine weight ratio or balance, and it behaves that way, but it's a little more squishy and less refined than the 718. So I believe I gave the 718 a 9, and I give this an 8.5, which is fantastic. It's mid-engine, handles super well, and it hates being behind really slow people. All right, for thrill, I gave this an 8.8, which is actually higher than I would have thought for a car with 385 horsepower. That's because it's mid-engine, it handles so well, and because there's other factors that we're about to get through, like steering, that makes this car really playful. And there's something about that kind of slightly unrefined, imperfect handling compared to the 718 that actually makes it more thrilling to drive. It's slightly less predictable. And I'm not saying it's unpredictable, it's incredibly controlled. You only get that in compared to the 718. So I give that an 8.8. This car is thrilling and fun to drive. Woohoo! All right. So connection as a category is actually worth 35% of total score because it's so important as a driver. And for steering, I actually gave this higher than a 718, which I believe I gave an 8 or an 8.5. I give this an 8.8. That's because the steering is a little bit more feedbacky. You feel more, but it's heavier. And that contributes to the feedback feeling more meaningful and the steering being more engaging. And I love the steering in this car. It's not as good as a 992 GT3, which is why it doesn't get a 9, but I just wanted to knock it down a little bit so it sits in between the two. So for sensations, this car is, it's got a lot going on, and I love that. I gave this a 9 because between the steering, the brake feel, the shifter, and all of the appropriateness of the level of sensation that you get, where it's everything you want and nothing that you don't, this is almost perfect. It's hard to rate above 9s because I haven't driven enough cars, but this is at least a 9. I'm just gonna leave it at a 9, sorry guys. And then the most important thing, which is flow, the subcategory flow, which I think is ultimately how it all fits together. It's so fun to drive. I do find it somehow more fun than the 718. So I give this a 9. I give flow a 9. This thing is immersive and so fun to drive, and nothing takes away from that. Everything is maybe not as good as some things in the 718. Like the clutch feel isn't as good, the shifter's a little spongy, but nothing takes away from or distracts your experience. I guess one thing that I wish it had was the volume factor. If it screamed at the top end, it would be a 9.5 at least for flow. This thing engages you and doesn't take away from any aspect of the driving experience. Unless maybe you're on a straight and you're trying to go fast and trying to hear the exhaust and you don't. So overall, we're screwed, but that's all of the scoring. Let's get back into the garage and put this on the board.
So if you don't know, DriveLab's all about speed and simplicity. We cut down the number of formulas you need to buy, the number of steps you need to take to wash your car, and we do it safer and better because our formulas are so advanced. We didn't cut corners, and we focus on what actually matters for people who want to spend more time driving and less time washing.
Okay, so I actually haven't checked the time. It was between 20 and 30 minutes. We're gonna do the time on the actual video.
before anyone gets upset at this score, I want you to know that this is the whole purpose behind this is being objective by not calculating how one subcategory score will impact the final score as I do them. It's just rate them as I see them, as I feel them, as I think them, and consider them, you know, weigh them against reference points, and I'll explain that. But do not total, do not calculate until the end so that you can, you know, not alter, or I cannot alter this score with some sort of bias. So I'm gonna rip through these and put up the score and then share something really important. So first, for style, the scores, I'm gonna put them on the board, but the total score was an 8.5. For sound, we got an 8.5. For performance, we got a 7.83. And for connection, we got an 8.83. So after the weights, the calculation comes out to an 8.5. So the score is higher for the 981 than it was the 718. And this is ultimately what I really want to dive into and discuss. First, the individual scores and subcategories say a lot more than the final score. I think the reason why this scored so high is because it just connects so well with the driver and the road, better than the 718, and I'm very confident saying that. And because of the way that the score is weighted and that how important that really is to driving a car, that's why it scores higher. Now, that doesn't mean that the 981 is a better car. If you took it on the track, or even if I took it on the track, and I've spent a lot of time on the track with the 718, it might be a different story. The 718, when it comes to what it is capable of, its performance score is higher, and what you get for the money. You might have something that feels a little bit more refined and robust, and that's really important to a lot of people. Another factor I want to talk about with the 981 is that because its power band is so different than the 718, it's a little bit lower down. I really highlight this as a key factor in enjoying the ride, enjoying the drive, because you don't need to worry about the length of the gear so much, which is an issue with the 718 manual, and you can enjoy the power more because you don't have to wring out the entire gear. You can shift shorter and more often and enjoy all of it has to offer. And yes, that is limited, the amount of power and the power band, but it is placed differently. And therefore you spend more time shifting and engaging with the car, which I think is a really key factor on the road. And the last thing I want to talk about with this car is reference points when it comes to scoring. So you'll notice I gave it a couple 8.8s, and that's kind of an odd score. Those are numbers that I just want to round, and I don't want to say 8.75, so I just say 8.8 because I want it to sit in between an 8.5 and a 9. And I'm going to do that more and more often when I have more and more reference points, meaning other cars that have scored a certain number, and I want to use that as juxtaposition to score this car. And I already have those laid out in my head. I haven't calculated these other cars, but I've driven a lot of other cars, and I can say what I would give a 9 for steering or something like that, and use that as a reference point. Now, the 981 might be a more engaging, fun car on the road than the 718 GT4, but stay tuned for the review of the GT4RS. We're gonna have that up soon. If you watch this entire video, it's because you're a huge car nerd like me, so I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and check out our products on our website, www.drivelabcarcare.com, and you can use code DRIVE10 for 10% off your first purchase for the DriveLab wash kit. Speed up your washing and enjoy the drive.